What is up, you guys? Welcome back to Twink Revolution. I'm Sam.
And I'm Gian.
And this Corona shit's not over.
We're still doing this.
We're still doing it. We're going to do a kind of atypical episode. Maybe like a lot of you guys, you're kind of feeling down about being locked in your house without much human interaction or having to see the same person over and over and over again.
Wanting to stab them.
We kind of wanted a break from talking
Strangle
about
them.
Political.
Sorry, I'm not done with this bit.
Stab
light them on fire.
Throw worms on them.
Call them a Strasserite and then throw them to the mob online.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dox them.
Yeah. Sorry, you were saying something. We're doing something different.
Yeah, we're doing something different. We've been watching a lot of movies and especially like kind of art house indie films and documentaries. And we thought we would talk about those and the political commentary around them, if there is any, or even just artistic value of them. And
yeah, we're a movie reviews podcast now. I am for context. I mean, I think I was holding my shit together pretty well in quarantine, and this week I've just been like over it. I'm over it, and I'm over like endless discourse.
Yeah, that's how I felt last week.
Yeah,
I was just like in a mood when we recorded our episode before the Amy. Was it before the Amy one? Yeah, I was just like I don't know. When you're like down, you don't recognize you're down until you're like really down. So I was like, oh, no wonder I've just like meh. If I sounded meh, maybe I sounded fine. I have no idea.
Yeah, I think I just sounded drunk. My problem is my like ability to kind of just like keep drinking through the endless ennui is limited.
Yeah.
Did you see? LA County just announced their lockdown will go for another 3 months.
I thought that was a potential.
Yeah, they said probably another 3 months unless anything changes.
Fuck that. I don't care anymore.
Well, yeah, and I suspect the Bay Area will follow suit. Although I don't know.
Yeah,
I've given up on hope.
The Bay Area, like, actually, we're gonna do 4 months.
Yeah, we can't be seen not being the most perfect of counties.
And this is the funny thing is people will attack anyone who's being critical of the lockdown when they bring up things like mental health and stuff like that. It's like, do you want everyone to die? It's like, well, we're just going to destroy the economy eventually, and it doesn't really matter because turns out we have no money to feed anyone. We're all just going to die anyway.
Might as well do it properly, though. Might as well really, really double down.
Like, I think you can do like a compromise eventually because like the rest of the country is not all going to be on the same page. So it's like, I don't know, do something like in between, like have spacing and stuff still, but maybe have like small groups, like we have like have small groups meet or have people to meet each other, like, you know what I mean? Yeah,
that even would be a good concession at this point. I think I realize how much of my life is spent sort of in bars and restaurants as like my only leisure activity.
Same.
And yeah, sort of a problem.
I miss standing there listening to people have fun and never saying anything. So I'm a man of few words.
Yeah, I miss I miss being able to feel really weird about not going out because I might be missing out on something. Like,
yeah, there's no FOMO.
I miss FOMO.
I miss FOMO too.
I miss being tired and not wanting to go out to a bar and then being persuaded to go out to a bar anyway and then kind of regretting going.
There's the idea of like having the option to do it and saying you don't want to is much more fulfilling than like being like told you can't do it and there is nothing open.
Yeah. It turns out I require that optionality in my life.
Yeah. We just say you need some consumer choice.
I do.
A marketplace of choice.
Well, that's the other thing about market choice is I'm not very good at like planning ahead on like meals.
Yeah.
I tend to like feel inspired and then I live close to like more than one supermarket so I can like stroll out. This is why you pay like absurd San Francisco rent is you can like stroll out, go get a bunch of groceries and be like, cool, all right, I'll make this meal and whatever.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a quick convenience thing that's like, all right, cool, I'm doing this now. Now that supermarkets are like a complex web of lines on floors and sneeze guards on everything and fucking weird mask rules and shit.
Yeah.
which I'm sure is all very sensible, but it's just like, it makes it very hard work. It takes the spontaneity out of it. I have to like really emotionally commit to going to the supermarket.
It makes me not want to go out because it's just like, oh, there's so much more to think about.
There's rules.
Yeah.
and you know, the cornerstone of any fuck you dad politics is, you know, just feeling deeply uncomfortable about rules that affect me personally.
I also really want a fucking haircut. Like, I have OCD around my hair, which is like deeply rooted from like my childhood, from far too many fucked up haircuts by my mom, where I've had bald spots once or twice. And I'm like, no one will cut my hair, and I really need a fucking haircut because I have like the thickest fucking hair, and it just sooner or later just like matted and be like a dog.
Oh, see, I think I'm gonna give in. I think I'm gonna hand you the clippers at some point and like make you just do whatever you can. If it's another 3 months, it's gonna grow out anyway. So
That's true.
fuck it. Oh man. Yeah. So as Sam said, we've been watching a bunch of movies. I realized I was starting to feel very like bored of kind of just like whiling away with entertainment. So I started like wanting to watch some movies that I just have like meant to watch for a long time, or just shit that's a little different from what I usually would watch.
Yeah. So one of them we watched last night.
Well, wait, here, I've got the lead into this one.
Oh, okay.
Speaking of things that don't make me miss the world and going out to bars or interacting with humans. Sorry, I just had to get that in.
We watched the movie Brooklyn Bizzare, which was produced in 2015.
Yeah, by Étienne Faure, something.
It was like
French.
a French-U.S. collaboration project. So it's based in New York City.
In Bushwick.
In Bushwick, for one. I said this a lot during this. Bushwick should just be like carpet bombed.
We are abolishing Bushwick. It's variously seems to be credited as Brooklyn Bizzare or just Bizzare. And that is yeah. I don't understand the meaning of this. We saw it on some free streaming service where it was actually legit. It had ads inserted into it, which made it all the more touching.
So it's about this French boy. I don't know. He's like probably like it's like 18,
He's
19.
18, yeah.
And he left France for an unknown reason and is picked up by, I think they're a lesbian couple.
Yeah, let's go with what we will refer to them as the hot lesbians.
Yeah.
Although it's Bushwick, so all sexuality is
extremely fluid.
It's fluid and up in the air.
But they randomly just like follow him, and
he's sorry. At the start of the movie, he's sort of homeless or sleeping
homeless.
rough.
But
extremely hot. He's like gorgeous.
He's so hot.
Yeah.
He's like think Euro twink who's like just on the edge of twunk.
Yeah, he's got a jacked Euro twink, and
I think Bellamy.
Yeah,
I like French.
Yeah, and to be clear, him sort of being on the cover image is like why this movie was in play at all.
Yeah, you get to see his penis as well.
Yeah,
it's a pretty.
There's the promise of male nudity. Yeah, it was kind of the only redeeming feature of this movie. I think it's fair to say.
Yeah. But one of the lesbians follows him and's like, "Oh, come stay at our place with our other adopted homeless youth or whatever," and they have a bar beneath where he can work, and they never explain why they pick him up.
Well, no, it's also done without audio. It's a weird so the style of this movie is like between sort of relatively high production values and just weird like audio issues, so you can never quite tell like, oh, are they doing a sort of like far shot of these two people talking where we can't hear them because they're trying to make a point, or did they just fuck up the audio and say like, fuck it, that's enough? Because plenty of times there's an offstage, like an off-screen character having a conversation with an on-screen character, and the audio just sounds like it's recorded inside a shoebox for the off-screen character, and it sounds perfectly good for the on-screen character. It's really great. It just added to the experience for me.
But their bar's like this burlesque bar where the producer probably described a bunch of their friends and was like, act like complete fucking nut jobs.
See, I think it might have been a real bar or a real burlesque scene or something.
Well, I feel like it probably was that.
This feels like a bunch of wish thinking by some like Bushwick weirdos who are like would aspire to run a bar like this where it's every night is sort of a different like burlesque act or sort of weird like cabaret vaudevillian avant-garde shit.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like fat girl burlesque or knife play burlesque and like I don't know what the fuck else.
A lot of freak show.
Yeah, a lot
burlesque.
of sort of freak show, earnest freak show performances, and so the rhythm of the movie is watch Frenchie McFrencherson walk around.
He doesn't even talk very much.
He doesn't talk very much. He sort of walks around being gorgeous. Then interior shot of the apartment above the bar where he will interact with one of the other characters, either one of the two lesbian owners of the bar or a cast of characters that evolves over this, hour and 40-minute movie. Or it's extended shots of a burlesque performance in the bar and then like cut to sort of like non-reaction shot of a central character. They're in the bar like cleaning a glass and they're sort of, I assume, watching the performance. And then the performance, there's really extended cuts of these, like it'll be like 2 full minutes of a shitty burlesque performance.
Yeah, there's a whole scene where one of the burlesque girls like literally is just like bringing beads out of her vagina.
Yes.
It's not like fake, it's like actual.
Yeah, there's quite a lot of unsimulated nudity in
So
this.
if you're too gay for that, maybe just like fast forward for those parts. Or just don't watch the movie, just a lot of boobs and vagina.
Yeah. There's a lot of male and female nudity. So the development of it is there's another twink who works in the bar.
But he's like very like Victorian-esque androgynous. He's not
he
like
looks like a hemophilic Habsburg offspring or something.
Yeah.
He's not ugly, but he's a very strange looking guy.
He has long hair too, and that's just no.
It's not a thing for Sam, apparently. So out there, listeners, remember to cut your hair before you take your shot at Sam. Yeah, and so I don't want to kind of give away too much for the one person who might find this teaser intriguing, but the I don't know, the whole aesthetic of the thing was fucking awful.
Yeah, and some of the acting was just dreadful.
What acting?
Well, the only
reading lines into the camera.
The only good part about the movie is the hot French guy. Like he makes the movie.
He carries the entire performance despite being a terrible actor.
There's also Charlie.
Yeah, so there are other sort of protagonists that sort of drift into the story at some point, which as a narrative structure I just found incredibly dull because there's not like, I don't know, there's these characters sort of are like introduced and then they go on their own weird little arc.
Yeah.
That is sort of tangential to or barely intersects with any of the characters we've thus far been introduced to and told to care about, and then they sort of just like are seen sort of in the background in a lot of scenes from then on.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, what was that? Like
they also never show the one supposed gay scene they have, but they show like multiple minutes of Charlie, who's one of the French boy's friends from the boxing gym, like having sex with the lesbians for like a solid 2.5 minutes.
There's like
He's
dangling
very hot.
Dangling testicles and thing. It was like as a sort of exposition upon like what nudity the director chose to show us. I was like, this is kind of weird.
Yeah.
If you sort of think about like the gaze of the director, drawing your attention as a viewer to something, I was very confused about what I was meant to be looking at.
Well, also, I feel like for every character, there was just like intended sexual fluidity where they never really highlight anyone's sexuality and like what is specifically. And they only show the straight sex in the show. They never show any of the gay sex that we know happens. They just never actually address it. So I'm like,
yeah, it's the Call Me By Your Name thesis that it would be tawdry and cheapen the gay sex to depict it on screen. You have to pan out the window to the tree outside or whatever.
The ending's also fucking weird. It makes no sense.
Yeah, I think they thought they were doing like so. To be clear, it's shot as straightforwardly like gay coded cinema.
Yeah,
it would fit into the pantheon of like any of the sort of like low budget gay flicks, right?
Totally.
Rattle off a few. What are they?
The way he looks.
Yeah, God's Own Country, like what's yeah, I don't know.
Brokeback Mountain.
No, see, that's high budget.
Yeah, but it's kind of like a similar, like kind of like weird.
Yeah, but I mean the specifically like gay cinema
Oh, the
produced
cheap
by.
and-
They're kind of
okay.
cheap. Like it's cheap. The lighting's a little like dodgy. Some
like
of the
a-
set dressing is like, meh.
Yeah.
So it's kind of it's fine. It's fine as a piece of like, presumably independent cinema or whatever. But then what it tries to do is take a turn to the like high concept art house.
Yeah, they don't tell you anything, and it's all supposed to be like, you should just figure it out yourself. But I think it's just a bunch of crap they just put together, and we're like, let's just have a bunch of people be weird and have a hot twink be our main star, and we can just sell this for
We got a
like-
movie. Yeah. Well, no, but that's I think it's like it's thumpingly literal for most of it in terms
Yeah.
of just like literally like what is happening on screen is the story, and this happens, then this happens, then this happens, and some of the dialogue is I'd say most of the dialogue is fine. Some of it's a little clanging, but like it's fine. The delivery of it's pretty clanging, but
The worst is the like anemic twink who talking to the other guy. Just like it's either like
incredibly stilted.
and so like desperate for believability and just like desperate in the way he talks to the French boy that it's like, oh god.
Stand back, I'm acting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so it's thumpingly literal, and then tries to go high concept at essentially in the last 10 minutes to kind of stitch together some kind of resolution. And I was just like, honestly, had they just put an extended graphic sex scene at the end, with the hot French guy, I would have been like, yeah, that's fine. This is essentially a kind of like extended erotica with some shitty burlesque cut in.
Yeah.
And that would have been fine, but it's
Well, I feel
it
like
wasn't fine.
I feel like the reason I wanted to actually finish it was like maybe they at the end they would have that gay sex scene and we never saw it, but they do in the end. I'm not gonna tell you what happens because maybe you want to watch a shitty movie, or you like high art crap. But they do show him in the train naked. And
He's naked quite a lot. It's
he's-
not saying there's no payoff to this.
yeah, he's a quite beautiful man.
Yeah.
He made it. He was the only like upside.
Yeah. No, it's kind of it is what it is. It's masquerading as a slightly higher concept than it really is. But the main part being the insufferable hipster Brooklyn shit from like 2014, 2015, with I think a kind of a gentrification subplot of that these freaks and weirdos who are all like, pansexual, gender fluid,
Yeah.
polyamorous. I run a burlesque troupe part-time in between my graphic design gigs. Weirdos. Just your classic like New York hipster fare.
See, what I assumed was this was already a gentrified establishment because
Yes.
it was a very nice bar. And I was like, this is like definitely gentrifier yuppie bullshit.
Yeah.
And then like it's getting gentrified. I'm like, how can you make this work?
Yeah, it is like, earnest ukulele covers and just all of it is, it feels like it's trying to sort of recall maybe like the sort of like 90s New York, like transgressive underground warehouse, cabaret scene or something, and trying to pretend that there's a link here, but like it's just not that.
No.
Yeah. There's just a lot going on there. I'm a big fan of The Room as a movie, just for all the kind of ideas that are floated and then quickly dismissed. And I've got to say, there's like a great angry subplot of like the lesbians fighting with each other because one of them's drinking while she's working.
And
and,
she's
like,
a bartender. Who doesn't drink as a bartender?
well, but it's trying to like there's a lot of sort of lingering dramatic like shots of her like pouring another glass, and then we just drop that on the floor. That's just never brought up again.
It's acknowledged in the end though when the bar's like becoming gentrified at the end. But also like they make the girl who's like upset about her drinking either like, I don't know, she comes across as like a bipolar where she's either like extremely manic or she's like extremely like hardcore bitch face. There's no in between.
Right. That is and I think that was just inconsistent writing. I don't think they were trying to be interesting. I think they just couldn't quite catch the tone of that character or any other character.
Maybe
So
they were all
anyway.
mentally ill. Maybe none of this actually happened.
Yeah, it could be an unreliable narrator sort of situation, which would almost make it better.
Yeah.
So anyway, that movie is called Bizzare, or variously billed as Brooklyn Bizzare, I think.
Why did
And
they call it Bushwick Bazaar?
isn't Bushwick in Brooklyn?
I don't fucking
I
know.
don't know either. Like I crossed the Hudson. I don't know.
I've never been to New York.
I've been to New York, but I was always in Manhattan. Because I'm a fancy bitch. I just never was there for very long. Much love to the people of New York, the people in the city of New York suffering under the yoke of, evil Governor Cuomo, who will not release them. But holy shit, this movie does not cast your city in a particularly flattering light, and I think along with Plandemic, it should be banned as sort of dangerous and deleterious to public health.
They could have saved so much money, just fired everyone and just had like the hot French boy just like walk around the city and like be like have some sex scenes and just never say anything. I'd rather watch that.
That would have been a better movie, honestly, or it would have had more redeeming value for me.
Totally.
I didn't actually require the character development attempts, because there wasn't character development, just attempts at character development or character arcs, of which there were none. Exactly none.
Yeah.
There's backstory. There's occasionally backstory.
But they don't explain the backstory.
No, it's just offered, like, turn to camera, explain, you came from Florida and you had a bad breakup or something, and then like
He looks like a Florida gay.
Yeah, and then that's it. So anyway, yeah, great. What else do we watch?
We watched The Animal People, which I saw on Netflix. Was it Netflix? Yeah, it was Netflix.
Yeah, it's Netflix.
So it's a documentary. It was produced in 2019, and it's by Denis Hennelly and Casey Suchan. That's a fun name. Hennelly.
It could be Denis. I don't know if Dennis or Denis, Hennelly. I don't know.
Denise.
We're just trying to help you locate these movies if you want them. You can find it on fucking Netflix, people. It's called The Animal People.
Yeah. So this one is it's a documentary, and it's about a lab science activist group. Fuck, I'm forgetting what it's called now.
Society for the something SPCH or something, isn't it?
Yeah, but there's the
Yeah. Here, I'll go while you look that up. So, animal testing labs in the animal testing companies versus Bay Area based sort of animal rights activist groups that are quite radical and quite sort of decentralized in their structure, and then the sort of myriad of tactics that this loosely affiliated group employs against said animal testing lab.
Yeah.
They did, in fairness, like has sort of documented horrible practices of like vivisection and abusing animals in their care and yada yada. And then the subsequent like government response in the state cracking down on this, terrorist group. They labeled them a terrorist group and called them all terrorists and tourists.
So it's the Huntington Lab Sciences.
Life Sciences. Yeah.
And I've heard of them. I mean, if you're familiar at all with animal rights history or anything like that, it's a very well-known activist group just because it was very well organized and in many ways quite effective. But it also lacked a central structure, and they would allow it's kind of like ALF, like Animal Liberation Front, where all actions performed under the act can be like accepted, and it basically shows through the film the issues with that, and it's pre and post 9/11. So it shows how they basically bring this corporation to its knees, but they passed the Animal Enterprise Terrorism Act, and this is one of the key legislations where it made a lot of their behavior around environmental and animal rights stuff terrorism. For example, like protesting outside of a person's house, which should be federally protected speech, but it was not. These people actually got prosecuted.
And one of the things I thought was pretty interesting is some of the tactics they were using about targeting this one individual corporation, and the structure of it. It's sort of told through quite a lot of like home recorded footage from at the time, which is I guess the 90s when these actions, like mid to late 90s.
It's like late 90s and early 2000s.
Yeah, so there's quite a lot of like home video footage of the various members of this group, and then modern day interviews with most of them.
Yeah.
And then a lot of like, it uses quite a lot of like news archival footage of like contemporary reports of the protests or things like that, or the investor video for Huntington Life Sciences and things. But the tactics they sort of used was to go after a lot of the companies that would do business with this particular animal testing,
like financiers
company.
And stuff.
Yeah, so things like insurance companies, banks that were providing them lines of credit or whatever.
The corporation sending the things to be tested by the lab.
Yeah, the individual pharmaceutical companies or cosmetic companies that were using this lab, and then they would use like tactics like going to the homes of people who, like the I don't know, the
like
chief financial officer or board member of, say, the insurance company that provides the insurance for these people.
Yeah.
And the Huntington Life Sciences was a British company, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. And operating internationally or whatever, but a British company. And so that, it seems like the story they sort of tell is that was initially quite effective, but they don't have such nice things to say about like the outcome.
No. So basically what happens is Huntington Labs, never gets destroyed. So they focus
still operating to this day.
Focus probably almost a decade on this single place, and instead they're consolidated with another company, so they're still present. They helped launch the career of Chris Christie, who was a big person like against this case.
He was the prosecutor in the case, right? In one of the prosecutors in wherever he was.
I think he was. I don't know. I don't think he was.
Yeah, no, I believe he was. I believe he was the state.
He might have been.
I think he was a state prosecutor in one of the cases, the basically terrorism cases brought against these people.
The Animal Enterprise Terrorism Act got passed, and it definitely had some free speech implications because none of these people actually committed terroristic acts, but instead because they were leadership of a decentralized org that never condemned like smoke bombs or people breaking into labs and like stuff. They were held legally responsible, which is crazy.
Yeah, so
and they all went to jail.
Yeah, so spoiler alert. They all ended up going to jail.
All 6 of the leaders, and these people were very careful. Like they would go into the woods. They had like talks where they did not talk about everything on phones.
There was never any concrete. So to be clear, that may be the precipitating event. So there was an incitement case, I believe, they were acquitted on, or one of them was acquitted on. Yeah. Somebody had like screamed something at a protest, something like burn this motherfucker down or something like that. And then the courts basically dismissed that case on freedom of speech because it wasn't a credible, whatever the legal test was applied.
They paid very good attention to like the legality of like what they were doing.
Yeah. But then there was somebody who, as this was a very loosely affiliated group that would not condemn any tactics. The whole idea being like, no, we're sort of had the Occupy style, like
they would also
there are no
post
leaders.
Anything about from these like anonymous sources about like what they did on their website.
Yeah, and so then somebody who is a fugitive still at large from the law. So if you see them, remember to call your local law enforcement. Planted 2 bombs.
Smoke bombs.
No, they're not. The smoke bomb incident was a different one. They were actual bombs.
You're
fertilizer
right.
bombs.
Yeah.
In the offices of, I can't remember, not Huntington Life Sciences itself, but some related organizations, whatever. Nobody was injured or killed, but much property damage, whatever. And then the leaders of then the group were implicated based on the idea that they had basically had phone calls with some of the people who were sort of linked to this. There was no credible.
They did a timestamp of people in 2 different states, Minnesota and I think California, and they were at similar times, but they just used that like, they happened at the same time that they were about this topic and stuff.
Yeah, they didn't have wiretaps on that line at that time.
Yeah,
it was that they had called each other or something. They were sentenced to variously sort of between like 1 and 6 years each.
Yeah.
And then it went to appeal. I thought it was fascinating. And the appeal decision is just absolutely breathtaking, because the appeal says basically there's no evidence,
Yeah.
but we're upholding the conviction anyway.
Totally. And the whole case was just like people who were at the homes being like, I was so scared of my child. And it's like, your child was 19 at the time. And
that's the incitement case. Again, that's the other one where they said they burned the house down thing.
Well, it was this for the main case, the one I sent him to jail. They brought in a bunch of like the like wives and like different people, and to be like just how scared they were for their lives and stuff like that.
The scariness of the group.
But it was there was no evidence. It was all just like, we got to make an example, because it's all like post 9/11 mindset. For a time, like the U.S. like FBI considered environmental and animal rights groups the number one terrorist threat, and it's like not like Islamist like Al Qaeda and shit. Like, what the fuck? But basically at the end, I mean, they basically learned some things. I think the girl, who's the only girl of the 6 people prosecuted, she's like, yeah, we focusing on one org didn't really get us anywhere. Like, this is a systemic issue. And one mentioned like capitalism briefly. But all these people were like tied to universities and like anarchistic groups. Actually, one of them critiques the group initially being anarchistic, and that's why he changed it.
He was the ostensible leader.
Yeah, but it's like, you didn't change anything from an anarchist framework. It's all decentralized. All tactics are good.
So it's horizontalist kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and
so yeah, it meant basically one person who went and planted bombs that could well have killed people. Like basically ended up sending all these people to jail who had not used those particular tactics.
Yeah.
And I think you can definitely say that there was a great miscarriage of justice in it. And Chris Christie is just, the human margarine sculpture.
Yeah.
Just looks incredibly smug as he's, giving his press conferences about like what a great job he did prosecuting them.
Yeah, it was all a career booster, and like nothing changed, and it just kind of like, if you're in like the self-identified left, I think it's a great film. For one, it's just really interesting, but also shows how like even like when you have massive support, massive funding, massive like you're doing everything that you should be doing probably, but if you don't have a centralized structure to like prevent like everyone being put under your brand, which can put you in jail, like this is what happens.
It's easy to discredit them based on the actions of a single individual not directly affiliated with them.
Like, if the anarchist like model of pure horizontalism would have worked, it would have worked in this case, but it didn't. Like they did everything. Like they were so careful. They had so much support. Like, if the labor movement had like that much support at all, like right now, I think we'd have probably much better outcomes than there.
Right. I mean, they had amazing like hidden camera footage that of exactly the kind that like drums up the heartstrings of people who would usually roll their eyes at those animal activists being uppity. But it's like
they're like punching
people
dogs.
punching dogs. Shit like that. The kind of stuff that like will get ordinary people mad and sympathetic. And what's the only thing you can do that will basically make you seem beyond the pale to these to normies? It's fucking bombing fucking buildings.
Yeah.
And then similarly not condemning those tactics. There are press interviews right after it where they're saying, well, it's not a tactic we employ, but we don't condemn any tactics. And it's like, fuck, you lost it. You lost the normies. And then suddenly, like, when the state wants to bring an incredibly draconian case and a frankly just sort of Kafka-esque trial, then, well, you're up Schitt's Creek, right? There's nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're on your own.
You still see it now. Like, it's kind of simmered down because most of these people are in jail now. But it's for things like people probably would get behind, like, I don't know, freeing the mink at a fur farm, or like going into a facility to film it, and that's now becoming more and more illegal. It's like a digital version of like The Jungle, like the book, which is like, I know it's like not completely accurate, but like it's supposed to be like an expose of the inside thing. But it's like, if you're not gonna like have some restrictions on what your organization is going to be liable for, you're just like fucked. Like you
Yeah.
need some direction.
Well, and I do think it's instructive, just given that this is late '90s. The Battle of Seattle happening.
Yeah.
10 years or so before Occupy, and the lineage. I feel like there's a sort of political lineage for what you would call the sort of modern like anarchist left.
Yeah.
In all of this, right? This very sort of activist-oriented, always turns out to be very impotent in its actually ability to get shit done. And like it would be worth inspecting the failures of these organizations, just because like they were all these tactics and all this kind of even this radical language that people use, and the way they structure their political activities. Like this has all been done before. It was done over and over again, and so. Yeah, I know. It feels worth learning something from it. Like we have been here before.
And I feel like the other thing is, while some clearly got the point of like the issues with the model, they also went straight into like kind of like liberal, like nonprofit industrial complexes. Like most of them went to like the NGO complex, which I think has its issues as well.
I'm shocked.
I mean, it never got adopted a theory of change or anything around like why capitalism is exploiting things and why you have no power. Like, I think I made the point on Twitter after watching this is that it basically shows without having any political power, all these like single issue causes are kind of pointless unless you get the PMCs on board, because animal rights is very popular in like Hollywood and the PMC classes. Like no one wants to see like the dogs being like fought and stuff like that. Like rich people don't want to see that either, so it's fine. But none of these people had political power. It's why they lost. They never tried to achieve any political or economic power. So it's like, why are you wasting all your time and money on a thing that's never going to change, unless you change the way our political economy is structured? You know what I mean?
There's literally, I think, a bit of in the Communist Manifesto. Let me see if I pull it. Where is it? It's talking about conservative or bourgeois socialism, and they want to call out to this section belong economists, philanthropists, humanitarians, improvers of the conditions of the working class, organizers of charity, members of societies for the prevention of cruelty to animals, and it goes on from there.
Yeah,
and has a critique of just this style of concern for the welfare rather than sort of restructuring of the conditions.
Yeah, it kind of actually ties into our next film. So the next film is Trophy.
Can I do this one because it's there's a lot of South African accents in it.
Yes,
and,
go for it.
Yeah, no, it's Trophy. It's a movie called Trophy from 2017, directed by Christina Clusiau and Shaul Schwarz. And it's about the trophy hunting industry. The sort of and it follows several different like ranchers, anti-poaching people, and that's about it.
A little bit of the animal rights people too.
There's a few sort of sanctuary people who like operate sanctuaries or rescues and animal rights
Foundation.
That's the one. Yeah. But all in Africa, largely centered around animals like rhinos and elephants.
Yeah.
And so one of the most fascinating characters is a a guy. He's an older gentleman who owns like the largest private collection of rhinos.
Yeah,
in the world,
around 2,000 rhinos, and he's quite famous in the animal rights world and the libertarian world for like his like thing. Basically, his whole idea is we need to legalize the rhino horn trade, because if we can't make money by removing the rhinos and create a legal trade, that poachers are just going to kill the rhinos, and then we're going to have no more rhinos left. Which there is an element of truth in his argument, but also there's an element of truth in both sides.
Yeah, well, so if you're not a rhino expert like Sam,
yeah,
if you're a rhino dunce like me, you can remove the horn of a rhino painlessly and without damage, and it'll grow back. So this dude has I think he said 60 million rand. I don't know how much a rand is, South African rand is, but lots of rand worth of rhino horn in secure storage because he's not allowed to sell it.
Yeah.
Previously, it was legal to sell farmed rhino horn.
Only in South Africa. There was, because the International Trade CITES, which is the International Trade for Wildlife, does not allow international trade of rhino horn, but it was legal domestically.
Yeah. And then clearly it all got smuggled out. No, it must have been legal to sell to Asia.
No, it's not.
By South African law?
Yeah. You can only sell it in the country.
Interesting. Prior to 2009 or whatever?
Yeah.
Okay, so whatever. So the point being, this dude who was already very wealthy, he was like a hotel, I don't know, he ran a bunch of resorts or some shit, had this huge farm of rhinos, and they dehorn all the rhinos ostensibly to protect from poachers.
Yeah. He had poachers still kill his rhinos because it's like a large park. Like, it's not just like a bunch of rhinos in a small cage.
And so, yeah, I mean, it's a fascinating story. And like, if you take him at his word, he is genuinely concerned about rhinos and is sort of doing the whole, like, that farming is the best way to ensure the preservation of the species. Because if you can sort of profit off these, like, incredibly profitable commodities, then he can, pay for better security against poachers and, or that poaching will not be a profitable activity because there's a giant legal market. He can care for the animals.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Then the other strand is on all of these private hunters, trophy hunters.
Every other industry is just killing them because you can't, like, farm the head of a giraffe. Like,
well, and you still can apparently hunt rhinos.
You can, yeah.
Yeah. So this is the funny thing. So there's a lot of other big game hunters, people raising lions and crocodiles and
antelope, giraffe, elephants, like everything, like anything you can hunt.
And then, the documentary follows these, like, groups of mostly American tourists.
Canadians.
Yeah. Canada's in America, Sam.
Oh,
wow.
I'm sorry.
You're doing an imperialism.
Yeah.
But yeah, so these, whatever. Mostly American and Canadian tourists who come to Africa to these sort of private game parks where they, like, tie a lion down to a stake and then you walk up and shoot it in the head with a hunting rifle. And you're like, I am a brave hunter. And there's people shooting elephants and crocodiles from, like, point blank range, and it's just hideous.
It's a luxury industry. I mean, for probably the most expensive animal is the rhino, and it's around $500,000, $300,000 to $500,000.
Bargain at twice the price.
Almost like if it's like $20,000 to like $500,000 for, like, the top 5 big game. And basically just these rich people who do put a lot of money into conservation. Like, they do admit from the framework that most of, like, South Africa and Namibia, where most of the big game hunting for African wildlife does occur, it did see a renaissance once they privatized a lot of it. But also, the country was going through apartheid, they were poor, and now you have a bunch of foreign hunter capital coming in to preserve the species and make money for rich people because people want to hunt animals. That's a long, old, rich person hobby. And you got markets. People have incentive to have more wildlife that was going extinct. But it's also an extremely horrid industry where it's like there's candid hunting. So, like, you've literally lion farms to, like, raise lions. And basically... that's, for many communities, the main financer for how they keep their income coming in as a, like, poor developing nation. Which you touched on late. As also, like, what happens if you stop the hunting for all the people in the country who maybe do benefit from maintaining wildlife. And there's no real answer in the animal rights world for that.
Well, the documentary, I think, takes an editorial line that is, like, trying to be kind of sympathetic, or rather, I liked it as structured. It's not sort of didactic in the sense that it is genuinely sort of showing that, like, all of these people kind of think they're doing the right thing, or are sort of motivated by, sincere passion for their particular perspective,
Yeah.
but the actual like just the systematic factors. And there's some fascinating court footage because the aforementioned Rhino Ranch guy, he sues the South African government as his sort of last resort to how can I actually get this trade. And there is a sort of moment of the absurd where the Crown defense attorney representing the government is saying, well, you know, he doesn't have to sell the rhino horns. He can do ecotourism with these animals, or he can provide hunting licenses. So basically, he is allowed to kill these animals, but he's not allowed to, you know, through this painless, harmless harvesting of their horns. He's not allowed to sell that, but he's allowed to allow people to shoot unlimited numbers of these animals.
Yeah.
And to be clear, shoot all of them. The law as written, basically, it could be the last goddamn rhino on Earth, and he could sell a license to somebody to shoot it.
He literally says if he goes out, like, you just have to, like, probably just kill them all.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of, probably would just tell him, but he could just kill them all.
Yeah. Well, and this is, I feel like the sort of, the first blush impulse when people hear these stories is to go take the kind of libertarian position of like, oh, the goddamn government. And you'd kind of be right. The government is not a sort of an honest actor in this particular struggle. A struggle between like multiple forces of capital and a particular sort of strand of activism around a very specific kind of animal activism. By people who are sincere, right? People who don't want poaching.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we just ban the trade in this thing. That'll kill the demand, right? Ha ha ha, he says.
Yeah.
I think there's like a single rhino horn in Vietnam will go on the black market for like,
it's worth more than cocaine, gold, heroin,
yeah,
diamonds, like literally everything. It's like probably one of the most expensive items in the world.
Yeah, I think it's like a few pound rhino
like
horn is
$500,000.
worth I think they say $300,000. I mean, he's holding one up and he's like, this is $300,000 on the black market. The trophy hunters themselves are a fascinating crew.
Yeah,
there's some like serious like macho daddy issues. I'm not really into like psychological explanations, but one of the dudes is literally like crying on TV, and he's talking about how he's so glad God gave all the animals to humans in the Bible. And then then the other shoe drops, and he's all like, "Yeah, my dad would tease me to because he would take me hunting, and I just wasn't able to do it or something."
It was whenever I saw an animal, he's like, "Oh," he would like tell me there's an animal, and I have to find it and then shoot it. It's like, this is a child, but my child brains aren't fully developed. This is not good for mental health.
Yeah, so basically his dad called him a sissy because he wasn't good at hunting or something, or didn't like killing animals as a child. Now his dad's dead, and he flies across the world and spends hundreds of thousands of dollars to go kill captive lions by like nuking them in the head with high caliber rifles.
This
whatever.
one was like in a private park, but they like
sure. It's the same thing though. They're fucking like, it's all like these like tame lions they let out of the cage for you to go hunt, and they're like tagged. It's your lion because he kills a crocodile in a fucking enclosure.
That's a different guy.
Was that the same guy? They all look the same.
No, there was a few different people.
They all look exactly the same. It's a type of guy who has like a shitty beard and like cult face.
There's also like a scene where they shoot an elephant, and it's like, oh, the people are like, oh, it's actually quite young. You should have went for a different one. And like literally just like 2 minutes on screen of like just the elephant like crying because it's not killed after like 12 shots.
Yeah.
It's like,
because these are all they're rookie hunters who are just like, they're all, your famous like Cecil the Lion guy. They're dentists and they're fucking like stockbrokers, and they go, nuke animals.
Well, they don't want to shoot it in the head because that's the trophy. So they shoot it in the body, and that's, for one, it's very hard to shoot elephants for the skin as well as rhinos. And also, they're quite fat, so like it takes a lot
body shaming elephants.
Like you don't want to destroy your trophy, so they'd rather let it like scream and they're like celebrating. And there's always like precarity, like African workers with them. It's like, I feel like the conversation around trophy hunting is so much like, why are these African people letting all their animals be hunted and blah, blah, blah. It's like, because there's not much other industry to develop, because we just have like neoliberalization of trade and stuff where all their other resources get exported. This is one of the few where they can actually make money. And they show the case of Zimbabwe, which It's like one of the anti-imperialist African countries or whatever, and basically communities have control over their wildlife and actually benefit directly from it, which is different than like South Africa and Namibia, where it's highly privatized in the hands of like almost all like Afrikaans people. There was like no black people.
Yeah, they're all sitting together. They're getting very drunk and arguing about the law. It's great.
But the issue also is you have people getting in trouble and arrested in Zimbabwe for illegally killing wildlife because there is an issue. Like lions break into your your little hut where your food is, or an elephant's destroying your crops, and they have no other option. Like they don't care about the animals because if they don't get rid of them, they starve or they get murdered. And people in like the West who are like, don't kill the lions, don't kill the elephants. It's like, okay, well then give them an alternative. You need to economically develop the region in the interest of like the working class people, because otherwise they're not going to care about your animals. There's a reason animal rights emerged in Britain during the Victorian era in the middle and upper classes, because they were like, I don't like seeing that like ox being whipped, or I don't like the blood sports done by the poor people. And it's like,
yeah,
there's no alternative for them. They don't create an alternative, and that's why they're like animal rights ideology is a failure. Like I'm a vegan, I believe in animal rights and whatever, but I also recognize if you don't get rid of like poverty and stuff, you're not really going to move anywhere. Like you're going to force African people who are like, I can barely feed myself to be vegan. That's stupid. Like
yeah. The it's funny. Is it in Zimbabwe where there's the anti-poaching guy? Yeah. So there's this kind of white Zimbabwean kind of dude who roams around as a sort of the anti-poaching guy, and with a bunch of like people with weapons, and they like go and I don't know, do some guerrilla tactics on some like young village men, where they're like, "Have you been shooting the elephants?" And it's hilarious. This dude is just like, I don't know if you've ever read like was it Shooting an Elephant by Orwell? This dude's just like, he's just some like character out of that. I don't know how else to describe this guy, except he has to go shoot an elephant at some point.
Yeah.
Because I guess some of the village councils and things have a quota or an allocation for to meat and trade or whatever. So he's the guy that they send out to shoot the elephant because he's like the anti-poaching guy, I guess. Anyway, highly worth watching. I really enjoyed this. It wasn't a topic I felt like I had a particular passion for. I didn't expect to enjoy this particularly.
Yeah.
But I did. I thought it was good.
I like it.
Yeah.
It's good. It shows you like the complexities of an issue that are viewed as like one way or the other.
Right. And they do reference sort of the changes around like the Cecil the lion being murdered so cruelly. Rip Cecil.
There's a bunch of rich people or like people in developed nations arguing over how other countries should take care of wildlife.
They're doing imperialism. They're doing a no growth.
It's like it's neocolonialism because like they're just exploiting the wildlife for foreign interest.
Right. It is the imposition of just a different way of exploiting the wildlife of a country. Yeah. So anyway, Trophy, 2017. That one was on
at Netflix.
It's on Netflix as well. Great. And then just quickly, because we're almost a good time. We've done our time. But the other one we watched is Fox and His Friends by Werner Fassbinder.
Socialist.
Yep, good lefty gay German West German director. This one's from 1975, one of his earlier films. I believe he was active until about 1982 or something.
You can't
actually,
read,
no, that's a lie. It's right in the middle of his career.
If you can't read, don't watch this because there's subtitles.
Yeah, and I don't want to spoil this one because this one I'll just implore you to watch. It's great. But the setup is it's sort of working class, young working class gay. Comes into some money and then meets a crew of the bougie gays, society gays, who mistreat him rather badly.
Yeah, because he's a prole.
Yeah, because he's a prole, and I mean, it's great because the class politics are evident and on display, but it's not sort of heavy-handed in that way either. It's not valorizing. It's just a kind of straightforward story told with that tension just clearly on display.
Yeah.
And I really liked it. It's a good movie. That's Fox and His Friends.
Where can they find that?
I don't know. That one's like Criterion Channel or whatever has it. So, just go do some... I'll be up against the wall for saying in quarantine I paid the $7.99 a month or whatever for the Criterion Channel because I wanted to watch a bunch of movies. There's always those movies where you're like, I really want to get around to watching that because I feel like I should.
Yeah.
And then your 20s just slide by and you're like, well, I still haven't done it, so maybe never.
Well, in my 20s too, still, so I haven't had that.
You still got some time, but I mean, I don't know. There was always a lot of movies where I was like aware this was a director or a movie that people found interesting. Fassbinder particularly is like always spoken about sort of as this, having a queer eye, and then also sort of a deeply woven political content, and I'd seen Querelle, or Querelle, I don't know how you actually say it. Assume it's I don't know, but which I really liked. It's amazing, another amazing movie by the same director. But I don't know. There's a lot of movies which I just never quite get around to watching, and so it's really great that the entire world is shut down and the only contact with new ideas is like Twitter or movies.
Yes.
So when I get tired of Twitter, I will defend my my extremely bougie Criterion Channel collection subscription, but it's bringing me some joy.
That's good. Well, that's all we have, you guys. If you still are listening right now and didn't get bored of shit with our off-topic video or episode, thanks for listening. Bye, guys.
Thanks. Bye.